Keep going.
Hello, 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 hello.
That'll work. Eddie, you want to just give me something?
Hello.
Sibilance.
So subtle.
Did you know that you also get cool stuff in return for supporting the podcast by joining our Patreon community? Check it out. Patreon.com/Bourbon Pursuit. The Eagle Rare Life Award seeks out rare individuals and honoring the shared qualities of courage, leadership, survival, devotion, character, and heroism. Read the stories from this year's nominees and vote at eaglerarelife.com. Voting ends December 5th, 2018. If you're looking for a new glass that complements any drinking experience, whether it's neat, on the rocks, or with a cocktail, look no further than the Duo glass from Aged & Or. Use code PURSUIT to get 15% off your order and free shipping at agedandore.com. That's agedandore.com. Hey everyone, this is Kenny and welcome back to this week's episode of Bourbon Pursuit. This past week was a Veterans Day, so I want to send a special thank you and shout out to all our veterans out there. Thank you very much for your service. Always greatly appreciated. Never forget. Sazerac, the company behind Buffalo Trace, is purchasing 19 brands from Diageo. The highlights of these brands being purchased are Seagram's VO, Seagram's 83, Seagram's 5-Star Goldschlager, and Parrot Bay. The sale of these brands is expected to be completed by the early portion of 2019. Heaven Hill Distillery has also unveiled plans for a multi-million-dollar expansion and rebranding of the Bardstown Visitor Center. This is to help grow the tourism for the industry and expect an even more innovative and state-of-the-art experience, especially if you're accustomed to going to the Edmund Williams Bourbon Experience downtown. You'd kind of know what that innovative portion really means. We're going to find out more details this Friday, and we're going to have some more information that we can relay via social media. Last week, Fred published his article on Forbes for the 2018 Best American Whiskey Everyday Sipper. As many probably already know, that Ezra Brooks' Barrel Proof won out in a very surprising show because he had actually gotten that recommendation from our Patreon community. So really cool to be able to see that. And he's going to be doing his Best of 2018 on Instagram live tonight, November 15th, 2018. So tune in and follow him and you can watch his Best of 2018 All-American Whiskey, Bourbon, Rye, whatever it is. And you can also check the show notes for his article in Forbes. Patreon shipments have gone out for October. There were a lot. And I still have the October monthly giveaway to do. I think there was close to like 60, almost 70 packages that I had to put together. So make sure you start checking your mailbox for all those Patreon community members that have surpassed their 6 months at this point. And the October monthly giveaway is going to happen. So look for that happening next week. Our first barrel pick for 2019 has been secured. Now, if you remember back, we had Bo Beckman on the show, and he talked about the Single Barrel Select program. And I was on my computer, I was frantically clicking refresh, so was probably about 5,000 other people because the website crashed about 20 seconds before it was supposed to go live. And I was actually fortunate enough able to secure a barrel of Buffalo Trace for our Patreon community. The date for the barrel pick is actually set in January, so if you're a community member, look for the sign-up form to happen relatively soon. And as always, thank you to Keg & Bottle out of the San Diego area that is going to be taking care of shipping this barrel and all the bottles across the nation to everyone in our community. So make sure you go and check out the website, kegandbottle.com, to look at over 700 whiskeys that you can have shipped to your door nationwide as well. Now, this past week, I had some very fortunate news. I get this email. It's kind of like a Sunday wrap-up, and it's from a site called Podkite, and then I had to kind of go and double-check it with another site, and it was kind of gives you an idea of where your podcast is ranked and overall of iTunes, as well as what new reviews came out, so on and so forth. And I was really surprised because we hit our highest ranking ever this past week. We were number 6, the number 6 podcast in the arts and food category inside of iTunes, and also number 77 in the arts category as a whole. I mean, we are creeping up on the door of some of the bigger podcasts out there that we have the opportunity to get into the top 200 of iTunes podcasts overall. It's amazing to be able to see that. And it's not that just me and Fred and Ryan, our team that got us here. It's because of you all. You all help spread the word. You leave reviews. We always said about those iTunes reviews, they go a far way. That's what helps us get those rankings. And that's what helps spread the show and get it out there to more people. And as well as when you go and you tell a friend about this podcast, they have the opportunity to learn and share that knowledge with you as well. Now, today's podcast, we've had Jimmy and Eddie on the show before, and we've got some upcoming episodes featuring Bruce and JoAnn themselves, but I don't think anyone has ever had all four of these people sit down and talk at one time. We go into bourbon, we go into family, we go into the roles they play in the business. We talk about the new Kentucky Spirit glass design, and maybe they weren't too happy with it as well, but we also dig into a lot more. It's a family affair with some good exchanges of compliments from each other around the table. Now, with that, enjoy this week's episode, and here's a quick message from Joe at Barrell Bourbon, and then you're going to hear Fred Minnick with Above the Char.
Hi, this is Joe from Barrell Craft Spirits. Coming this fall to our Barrell Craft Spirits line is a 15-year-old, very complex bourbon that was blended at peak maturity. Find out more at barrelbourbon.com.
I'm Fred Minnick, and this is Above the Char. When Forbes asked me to write a holiday gift guide, I was reluctant. The last time I wrote gift guides was for Parade magazine in 2013. I felt my soul being ripped out of my body as I was following their SEO goals for their online publication. I had to pick an ice tray and suggest cocktail shakers I didn't even think were that different from the competition. I hated it, but my book editors loved it because, hey, nursing homes and school teachers read Parade. And they thought, if they read Parade, they may just read my books. Fortunately, I built a career where I no longer have to depend on such nonsense. With Forbes, I only wrote about the whiskey. And that's even somewhat annoying. There are so many damn gift guides that I just feel disingenuous following the formats of the modern guide. So I did it my way, basing it on price and what kind of personality would be well suited to drink the bourbon. I never said one was better than the other. That's for my blind competitions. But I did suggest the music lover sip on Larceny and the feisty one kick back Wild Turkey 101. You'll have to check out the story on Forbes to see why I said those things. But at the end of the day, as much as I hate to admit it, and despite my thoughts going in, my gift guide is just another list that will be cycled through social media and cause a stir for leaving somebody's favorite bourbon out. As somebody told me on Instagram recently, why should I listen to you? And the fact is, you don't have to. And you're the best judge for the best bourbon for you. So, you want to know the ultimate bourbon gift guide? It's the one you write and give to your loved one. And that's this week's Above the Char. Hey, make sure you're following me on Instagram and Facebook. I'm starting to do a lot more live tastings. Search for my name, Fred Minnick, and you'll find me. Until next week, cheers.
Welcome back to an episode of Bourbon Pursuit, the official podcast of bourbon. Kenny and Fred, the new duo right now, we're on site here at Wild Turkey, and actually this is the place. I'm about 150 feet away from where we recorded last time with Jimmy and Eddie here, which was in the old visitor center. But now we're up on a hill today because they had some other kind of barrel rolling competitions or something going on this past week.
You know, it feels great over here. We're underneath a nice tent. It's cool. And, you know, it just feels like history of Kentucky all around us.
You can almost smell it. You can almost smell the rick houses.
I can smell them. They smell good.
Yeah, they're coming in. But let's go ahead, and we're going to get this kicked off right away. And we've got not the whole Russells, but we got a good integral part of the Russells here that take care of a lot of the operations of what you see from distilling, from tours, from tasting, to shaking hands at the gift shop, from brand ambassadoring. Is it ambassadoring even a word? I don't know. We can
if it's a word, I think the Russells patented it, a long time ago.
Cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to start here on my left. So just really quickly, just introduce who you are and where you kind of fit in this whole family.
Sure, I'm JoAnn. I'm Jimmy's granddaughter. My mom is his daughter, so that's kind of how I got started here. And I kind of take care of everything from helping with barrel pick tours to hosting events here at the distillery to also doing a little bit of brand ambassador work. So
Ambassadoring, absolutely. And we forgot to mention that there's going to be plenty of trucks going by, as Jimmy had mentioned before we started here. So we got to at least 5 p.m. that the trucks are not going to stop. So Eddie, go ahead.
So I'm Eddie Russell, Master Distiller. I'm just here to keep Jimmy Russell straight.
I'm Jimmy Russell, the Master Distiller. I'm kind of new at this job.
I'm Bruce Russell. I was the national brand ambassador, but I've been replaced. And so now I'm kind of transitioning back to the distillery, learn how to do what these two guys do.
Now they're pestering you all the time about moving here. So what's up with that?
Yeah, it's move here, get married, have grandkids. You know, it's the typical thing you get from your grandpa.
Uh-huh. They just want you to kind of get yourself locked in. Like, you got to be a part of this. Be back here all the time.
That's right. Me and Mimi, that's what I call Jimmy. Me and Mimi are getting ready for Dad to leave, so me and him can take over.
Wow. Now I've got a funny little story to share about Bruce. He was on a panel with me at Tales of the Cocktail. Remember that, Eddie?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Ed, I don't want your vein to get pulsed up there. But you remember what he said when he was talking about drinking whiskey and Coke? What did he mentioned? He mentioned another brand that wasn't Wild Turkey. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I might remember something about that. He said a few things up there I sort of had big smiles about.
Did you have to give him a talking to after that, or?
You know, he knows everything, so I can't tell him too much.
What do you say to that, Bruce?
I said sounds about right.
Yeah.
I stand by my statement. I think that product tastes better with Coke than our product. I don't think that's a detriment to our product. I think that says something about us being pretty good.
There you go.
Oh, so what you're saying is the other one was inferior and that it needed Coke?
I'm just saying it has a very particular flavoring note
All
that
right.
matches really well with that vanilla and Coke.
That's a well played. It's like he knew
Thank
I was
you,
going to
sir.
bring this up.
That's right.
So how long have they been putting the pressure on you to start moving back from Mimi over here?
I mean, probably as soon as I moved. I spent some time doing a lot of what JoAnn's doing in the visitor center, giving kind of VIP tours and that kind of thing for a while, and worked a little bit at the distillery. But I got to spend a good amount of time kind of apprenticing under Dad and Mimi before I left. And I think having that time where you're with somebody every single day, sitting in their office, pestering them, because that's how I was, writing down everything that they would tell me. Notebooks full. I took his notes that he had written and transcribed them down in my own hand. And I think after I'd pestered them so long, they're probably glad to see me leave at first. But then after I was gone a little bit, they're like, wait, I kind of liked having him around. So I think they want me back now, not only to get me back here and see me, but to teach me the stuff that they know. I've got the best two, mentors in the world right here.
Could also be because they love you, Bruce. I mean, for God's sake, it's family.
That's more my mom and my grandma.
What about you, Eddie? What do you say to that? Like, are you excited to have him here? Or are you kind of like, well, give me just a few more years in the spotlight over here?
Oh, no. I'm happy to have him back. I need the help. It'd be good to get him back to where we can get him trained. I think that's what it's about for us at Wild Turkey. We want him to actually know everything about the job and not just have a title. So, he knows a lot about it, but to get him back just to get down to the fine details of how to do everything. So I'm looking forward to it. No grandkids for me. That's just his mom.
Not ready for that one.
No, we haven't even got rid of them yet. So.
Jimmy, how old were you when you started working at a distillery?
I started on September 10th, 1954, and I was 19. I turned 20 in November of that year.
Wow, that's amazing. And so he's slow to the game in comparison to you.
The old master distiller here was a young distiller before prohibition by the name of Mr. Bill Hughes.
Yeah.
And he put this distillery in operation, and he started training me. Normally when you start in one job and you stay there, it's barreling or bottling or wherever it is, but they keep moving me around. Every time I'd learn a job, I'd have to move, and they trained me on everything here.
What has changed from from the operation standpoint from that time that you first started
when you were 19 years old to today?
Well, at that time, I was in quality control and in the distillery. You would take samples, and everything was done by hand then. You didn't have all this fancy stuff to do the sample. And you might end up with a scoop shovel shoving it out of the truck before the day was over with. You done a little bit of everything. And nowadays, everything's taken to the lab and done in the lab and everything. Same way as sampling. We used to sample all the barrels in the warehouse. We'd go to the warehouse and taste them. Now they bring them to the Century Lab and do all the tasting there and everything. So, and we was making 60 barrels a day. When I come, we had 4 storage buildings. Now we're making 560 barrels a day. You got 28 storage buildings now?
29.
29. Got one going up and another one. So,
Well, which one's named after you?
All of them.
the ones across the road here in front of us, the old A warehouse, it was built in 1894. So it's a lot of bourbons went through that house in the last 100 and some odd years.
So I think with an old warehouse, this actually brings up a pretty good question. You know, we've all seen the familiarity of the Barton 1792 warehouse falling down. Now, you just talked about that old warehouse. Have you all done anything recently to sit there and bring people in, certify them, look at the plumb bobs, whatever it is, to make sure that everything's still in good shape?
Yeah, so we have plumb bobs in each corner in the middle of every warehouse and check them every month. If you have something wrong, Busey comes down and checks things out or fixes things for you. It's constant work to keep them up to grade.
You got to keep them balanced. If it gets out of balance, it's going. It's nothing you can do about it, especially around here. We have a lot of tornadoes. And sometimes, but we've never lost hardly any barrels in a tornado. We lost a lot of roofs and sidings and everything, but no barrels.
Mm-hmm.
That incident was so bad for bourbon, that warehouse incident.
Yeah. Something I didn't understand about that, half of it fell, then a week and a half later, another half fell. The way ours is tied together with braces and all, if it's going, the whole thing's going, I don't see how.
It's definitely the first one we'd ever seen fall half like that. So they must have been working on it, I guess.
So we're going to start conspiracy theories by the Russells.
That's right.
JoAnn, what's yours?
I have none.
You have none. Bruce, nothing else to add? You know, have a conspiracy theory about that one?
Nah, I think it just probably was tilted over, and wherever that foundation was weak or the bottom of it was weak, it probably just had it keel, is what I think they called it, split right down the middle. I've never seen anything like that before. Because it looked like you cut out a piece of pie, like just a section of it was like perfectly down the middle.
Could be some bourbon, collapsed warehouse bourbon coming out at a nice price.
Oh, no, they would never do anything like that.
Don't say that, because I'm sure we would.
Every opportunity is a marketing opportunity.
That's right.
Yes,
It wasn't always that way, though. Like when you were coming up the ranks, you had the federal government that would check every single thing that a distillery would say. Now it's much, much looser.
Well, yes, in ways, but still, up until 1980s, it was 9 or 10 government men sat here with us every day, carried all the keys to the buildings and everything. They checked everything. They checked the grain before you could unload it. They checked everything. They would check. You go in the storage building to pull the barrels out, they'd be right in there with you. Same way with filling barrels. They sat in the cistern room where we fill the barrels. And back then, you had every barrel had to be gross and weighed. You had a different proof gallon on every barrel.
Yeah.
Nowadays, and each one of them was serial numbered, 1, 2, 3, down the line. Now they have lot numbers on them, and all put in. And ours is rated to fit 3 gallons rated capacity, so that's the way it is nowadays.
Do you think that the distilling industry misses that the government oversight that closely?
Well, they still control us pretty close. We have inspectors comes in. We never know when they're coming in here. They come in and do an inspection on you every so often, make sure everything. And a lot of times, I think they come in here and we don't even know they're here and go on to tours and things and see what.
Well, actually, Kenny's undercover.
Yep.
So that's part of this whole podcast.
That's what I thought.
It's a long con. He's been doing it for a long time just for this.
So far, you got a B+. It's pretty good.
I think back in the old days, it wasn't even as much government. It was Jimmy and Booker Noe and Albert Tilly and Parker Bean that wouldn't allow each other to go out and spread marketing that wasn't true.
Yeah.
I think it was those guys because they were basically the ones making it. And if they would call each other out if they went out and said something that wasn't true. So I think it was a little more them where, it's such a bigger category now.
Yeah, we've lost the business has lost its way with that, because now you have so much marketing.
You never knew that so many grandpas had secret recipes hidden in an ad. It's amazing.
Well, not only that, like master distiller. I mean, what does master distiller mean to you, Eddie? Because
Well, to me, you know, the Bookers and Jimmys and Elmers and those guys were master distillers because they'd worked all through. Nowadays, it's, you know, it was a great honor to be named one because of them, but nowadays people are master distillers before they ever make whiskey and things like that. So it's a little different now. It's just sort of more of a title that's put up on you.
I hate how it's changed. The people that have changed it have taken away the opportunity for somebody like me or an up-and-coming distiller to really be a master. Because now, even if I work 30 years like Dad did and get that title, most people are just going to see me as the same as somebody that started tomorrow. Master distiller today kind of just means head distiller, the person in charge of that place. Mm-hmm. Where it used to be, you would get the title head distiller and then would work for a long time and then be a master, but it's kind of reversed. I don't think anybody's hardly calling themselves a head distiller anymore. It's just master.
And, you know, I know Kenny and myself, we both have, you know, in our careers, we've actually tried to call people out and bring attention to this matter, and it has not done a dang thing for it.
I never will.
I don't know how you stop it.
Marketing is too powerful, and at the end of the day, your normal consumer that's going to Costco or a big liquor store or wherever to buy their liquor, they just want to see master distiller because it sounds pretty, you know. Mm-hmm. They don't care about the difference. Now, we might, the people in the industry and the people that really care, but that base consumer kind of controls all.
Jimmy, when you look back on, I mean, all your friends, Booker, Parker, you know, Mr. Hugh, who taught you, you know, you've got to be disappointed to see that trend of people just taking the term master distiller, not truly earning it like you did.
Well, you know, I say Eddie and I, we started in production. Booker was in production. Elmer was in production. Parker was in production. And actually, I was the first one they ever sent out on the road. It was all marketing salespeople. And I know the first trip I made, been, 30 years ago, I guess, or longer. I made a trip all the way across the United States. And everywhere I went, it was whiskey. Didn't make any difference what it was all whiskey. Nowadays, you better know what you're talking about, because everybody, like Fred and them, writing about them and everything, people knows what's going on now, and you say something, it's going to be on the internet in a little no time, right?
Yeah. That is true.
Well, let's take that and kind of flip it, you know. So we talked about how master distiller maybe not be the correct term that we're giving people now. Now, there's another way that also people look at this and they're like, well, master distiller is just a talking head nowadays. They're not actually distilling, right? They're on the road, they're marketing, they're doing anything. So what's your kind of take back against that as well? Because there is that side of the market that does see that.
Oh, I definitely think it's a big part of it. And, you know, Jimmy and Booker and them set the way for all of us because people want to see the people that we're making. There's not too many of us that do make it still and go out on the road, but you know, for us, and that's what's about Wild Turkey, we've always been genuine and open and tell the truth about things. You know, I started here in the union, worked every job here, you know, all the way through. I was 35 years before I came a master distiller, so I guess I'm slow.
He's still whining about it, isn't he?
He's still chuckling.
He didn't think I was right when he started.
Yeah, what did you think your name was, Eddie, when you were...
My name was No for about 25 years because every time I'd ask Jimmy something, he'd say, nope, no. Now I can outrun him, so I don't have to ask.
That's one thing about it. We haven't changed our formula. Been the same formula just about the whole. We make our own yeast every day, and we still have our own yeast culture. And all I can tell you about the yeast is 64 years old. It was here when I got here, and we're still using the same yeast culture.
Now, one thing that you all did change, and I don't know, you know, it was part of like the accountants, but it was the barrel entry proof. Like in the last...
We did, and really a lot of that came from, you know, up until the 60s, you couldn't even barrel higher than 110.
That's right.
And when I came here, Jimmy and our head CEO, Sylvester Roboto, they said the best whiskey went in the barrel between 105 and 110, so we did it at 107. Well, everything was fine until Jimmy came out with Rare Breed. You know, if you just stayed with one product, you'd have been okay because 107, you dump, it's 104 or 5, you bottle at 101. But when he came out with Rare Breed, I was having to distill all of my older whiskey off the top floors to get the proof. And then all of a sudden, all my older whiskey was below 100. I did a diamond for his 60th anniversary. I wanted it to be 101 because he's Mr. 101. When I dumped it, it was 95 proof. I had to quit doing a 12-year-old 101 in Japan because I couldn't get 101 proof. I had to go to a 13-year-old 91 proof. So I went to 110 for a couple of years in 2004 and still was struggling a little bit. So we do our entry proof at 115 now.
Why does it, we've talked about this before, but why does the proof in some warehouses go down and some of them it goes up?
Well, in our typical warehouses, you'll see more moisture comes out of the barrel. So a white oak membrane will actually let a water molecule out, but not an alcohol molecule because it's denser. So as it gets really hot on those top floors in the summer, it pushes that water out. But eventually it soaks into the barrels in the bottom and the proof goes down. So you'll have more liquid at the bottom, but your proof will be lower. And the longer it sits there, the lower proof it's going to be. Just the same way up at the top. So, if you put it in at 125 to get 140, you're going to have to put it on the top floor for several years to get it that high. But what you're doing is taking water's actually coming out of that barrel.
You think about alcohol evaporating faster than water, but if you got an airy, dry place, the water will actually go through the pores in that wood and leave alcohol strength. Now, like Eddie said, in a damp, cool place, it'll go down in proof because the water can't get out of that barrel. It'll drip back down in the barrel, and you won't lose near as much out of a barrel as you do as where the alcohol's going up all the time.
JoAnn, you taking all the notes over here?
I really am, though. Every time they talk, every time I see them in the distillery, I try and kind of absorb as much as I can while they're still around and still working here. I mean, like Bruce said, they truly are the two best mentors that you could ask for in the industry. So.
And you got them on speed dial.
Yeah,
that helps.
It's nice.
They're pretty cool. When people are coming in for a visit, are they wanting that level of detail?
It definitely depends on the group. I think if they're in the industry, they want kind of like the more nerdy chemistry side of how we do things here at Wild Turkey. And then sometimes you kind of get that general public that's just like, I want to see what you guys do here. So it's definitely about reading the group and just seeing what they want to know when they ask those questions, what details that you want to go into.
Well, as I say, they're better educated now. They know what's going. Fred, people knows what's going on now. Like I said, when I first started out, it was all whiskey. It didn't make any difference what it was. But now people's down to details, knowing exactly all about it. And you got the bourbon societies, women of the bourbon society, the whiskeys of the world, and they're on contact with each other all the time. And they know if you do something a little different, it's going to be on the internet in a little no time.
It's true. Do you ever read your Yelp reviews from the tours?
I used to when I was a little bit more of a tour guide position at the visitor center, just in case, because I know these guys hold our family to a very high standard, but not too much anymore.
See what your Christmas bonus is going to be like.
No presents this year. Just depends on the Yelp reviews.
It's changed completely on how I interact. I mean, for my first 25 years, if you went out on the road, you went to a retail store and signed bottles. Now, when I go to a city, I'm meeting with the USBGs, the bartender guilds. For the first time in my whole life since college, I have a PowerPoint where I get into the science behind it. I learned it through apprenticeship with Jimmy. He used cooking a lot to describe why we did things. Because it tasted good was his main thing. Mm-hmm. When you'd ask the question, because it tastes good. So hundreds of years behind me, but going back and trying to learn a little more of the science behind it and what happens when you distill at the lower proofs like we do, what happens in that barrel. So that's things the bartending community especially, you got to get into that detail. But like JoAnn says, if it's just a normal consumer, then it's just general stuff. But when you're getting into people that's in our industry, bartenders, even distributors, you have to go a little extra step because they're asking those questions now.
I mean, do you really look at the bartending community as like that next gateway or the gateway to driving even larger adoption of Wild Turkey worldwide?
They're 100%. They have changed our industry completely because most young men and women are going out to a bar in a social setting, having their first Manhattan, Old Fashioned, Boulevardier, the old classic cocktails, and that's what's getting them into bourbon. So the more information, they're our first line of talking to people. Somebody comes in and says, I wanted a bourbon, which one do you recommend? We want them to talk about Wild Turkey and why Wild Turkey's special to them. So those are the type of things that you really have to get into, more so than just smiling, shaking hands, and kissing babies like it used to be.
I will say that some brands don't get that about the bartenders. Wild Turkey has made bartenders a priority, and I think for that reason, you see a lot more Wild Turkey cocktails, and that their parent company Campari has a lot of liqueurs and everything too that they can pair it with. So not all bourbon brands do what they've done to get the bartenders, and I'll say you can definitely tell. Now, Bruce, that's kind of like your thing. Like you're out there kissing babies and shaking hands at the
that's kind of what I've been doing for the past 4 years, and it is my peer group. It's people my age that are out there making these drinks and that have.
Wait,
really...
you saying your dad doesn't relate to them? Is that what you're trying to say here?
That's pretty close to what he said.
Yeah, pretty much.
For the audience as well, like state your age, because I think there's a lot of people that don't know.
Yeah, I'm 29. And when I first moved down to Austin, I was 25-ish, right around that age. And it's really exciting, but it's people from 21 to in their 40s now that are working behind bars, that are working in restaurants, that are working in these liquor stores that are really pushing American-made whiskey. It has never been as strong as really it is today overall, because even when it was good back in the day, I don't think that you saw the amount of young people thinking that what we do is cool.
No, this is the first time in history that every generation has been drinking bourbon at a high level.
And it's so exciting to walk into a bar and see a 24 or 5-year-old person that's 6 months into working behind a bar, but they're so excited to see Jimmy. Mm-hmm. That's so cool to me, thinking that, when he started, the only people who knew who he was us in Japan, and that was it. And now it's 21 and up if they're a consumer of American whiskey, and everybody knows who he is. These guys, him and Booker and Elmer and them, but even the guys today that travel around like Dad and Denny Potter that was in Heaven Hill and
he's at Maker's Mark now.
I know. He was at Heaven Hill.
Yeah, there's a keyword that was in there.
Yeah. But these kind of guys that travel around that like the dad's kind of generation of guys that are out there traveling, now they're the rock stars. And it's really cool to see how excited people get when they talk to these guys.
I'll say this, Jimmy, you have meant so much to bourbon and to me personally and to a lot of people out there. You are bigger than life for a lot of us. I mean that.
When I started in the business, it was selling cases, sell boxes. You wouldn't worry about bottles and all. And this is where the big things come in now with the bartenders and all mixed drinks. And my age, it was a Southern gentleman's drink. They got their cards or cigars and their bourbon, went to the back room and played cards and drank their bourbon. And so now it's come a worldwide drink. And it's anywhere you go in the world. The export market is huge now.
Was there a moment for you that kind of captures your career, this amazing storied career? Is there a singular moment that you can point to and say that was good for me?
Yes, well, I think, when they started going to the bar, and everybody going to bars and all, instead of just selling boxes. That's what all the salespeople back in that day and time, all they were considering how many cases they could sell. Or now, and to me, I'm not going out here and pay $40 or $50 for a bottle to see if I like it. You'll go to a bar now and they have cocktails or have mixed drinks or have drinks and do sampling. You can taste everybody's bourbon, see what's. My thing is, everybody tastes a little different. Enjoy what you like. It's not, even though I want them to drink Wild Turkey, but I just get the word bourbon out.
So I want to kind of rewind it back a little bit when you're talking about going to liquor stores and signing bottles now, because I know you all had the opportunity to do this, but I want to hear what's the worst part? Or is there one question that you always get that you're just like, here we go again? This episode of Bourbon Pursuit is made possible through listeners like you, supported through Patreon, and with partnerships brought to you by the following. Every year, there are hundreds of stories just like Chris's that are in the running for the Eagle Rare Life Award. Chris Norton is a former college football player who is paralyzed and defeated the odds and is now helping others walk again. The nominees that earn the most votes will be presented to an award-winning panel of judges who will select the grand prize winner and 6 $5,000 category prize winners. The grand prize of $50,000 will go towards the charity or cause of the winner's choice. Voting ends December 5th, so head on over to eaglerarelife.com and vote now. Versatility. It's what's been missing in the glass space. We've got rocks, Glencairns, Copitas, brandy snifters, and more to accommodate a wide range of drinks and the way we enjoy it with or without ice. It took a Kickstarter campaign to change things up, and this is where the Duo glass from Aged in Ore comes in. It's a 10-ounce double-wall glass that eliminates the need for coasters. It's tulip-shaped that allows your sense of smell to pick up a wide array of flavors. And it has 1-ounce indicators, so no need for more glassware when making cocktails or pouring just the right amount of your favorite bourbon. It's also ice ball ready that comes with its own 2-inch ice mold that snugly fits into the glass for a slow melting experience. For a limited time, Bourbon Pursuit listeners get 15% off orders and standard free shipping at agedandore.com using the code PURSUIT. So go over to agedandore.com, that's aged and ore.com, and get your Duo glasses today. So I want to kind of rewind it back a little bit when you're talking about going to liquor stores and signing bottles now, because I know you all had the opportunity to do this, but I want to hear what's the worst part? Or is there one question that you always get that you're just like, here we go again? Who don't be shy.
What's it like working with your family?
I think that's my favorite question.
Well, he's 29. He's already a curmudgeon. I mean, my God.
I will say, Fred's never asked me that.
And say, people like Fred and them, the writers, is doing wonders for us. And back in my day and time, you never saw any writing about bourbons or anything. Nowadays, anywhere, everywhere, podcasting and all, it's on all the time out in the fields and everywhere.
See, we're your new front line, right?
Right.
Yeah, we're your new bartenders. We're getting you out in front of all
I would say the whiskey media is more like artillery.
Yeah. We're
more
kind
like
of backup because the guys.
No,
that are
artillery
listening
is not backup.
With the guys that are doing that are listening to this is not the same consumer that's at the bar. It's a kind of a different assault. You all are helping us kind of.
I need to teach you about military.
Okay, you do. You do.
After this, I'll explain to you how important artillery is.
You all kind of keep us fresh in the minds. I think podcasts are kind of the biggest thing right now. That and like online blogs and stuff like. Bourbon forums are kind of keeping what we all, lovingly refer to, because I am a bourbon nerd. The bourbon nerds out there continuing to grow in their wild turkey love. Where the bar is really a consumer, usually, that's a newer consumer. That's the consumer we're excited about. Because we know the guy that's going out of his way to listen to your podcast, it's a turkey fan, he's drinking our product. That's the guy that's probably my buddy that we're talking about secondary stuff or whatever about. It's just kind of a different thing.
I think you cut your dad off right before he was about to say something, so I'm curious to see what Eddie's going to say here.
Oh, you're talking about the thing that you sort of get tired of hearing. I mean, as you're out on the road, and I've taken over a lot of the travel out there a lot, and it's always the question, well, who's doing things if you're not there? And it's like they think maybe it's just one person, but we have employees that's been here on the average 20-some years. We have great people that work here. That's why I want Bruce to come back, so whether one of us is here all the time. Jimmy comes in, most days, but, he doesn't get into the distillery as much as he used to, so it'd be nice to have somebody to help him. Plus, for us, it's, like you said, we don't want to bestow a title on Bruce unless the title is deserved. And he feels the same way. I mean, we've talked about this a lot. He doesn't want to just come in here because I always tease him that I'm going to retire before Jimmy does. And I'm serious. They just don't listen too well.
You got different plans? You got some money stashed away for a condo in Florida or something?
Got enough whiskey stashed away. But, having Bruce here to where he can learn all that stuff, so that'll be important to us also.
Absolutely. So there's another thing I want to kind of talk about the whiskey in general, because this is something that you don't necessarily see at a Wild Turkey a lot, but you saw it in the last release of your Master's Keep was a lot of like finishings, like barrel finishings. I want to get a little bit of your opinions on barrel finishing and where you kind of see that inside the market, and if Wild Turkey is going to play more in that market as well.
Well, I think what we look for, especially with the Master's Keep series, is something that's different, something that's unusual. Jimmy, didn't experiment a lot, but some of the things he did was way before anybody else with honey flavored bourbon back in the 70s.
Didn't you like, I wish I didn't do that?
No. It's always, actually, we done that for people, mostly for ladies back in that day and time. Thought bourbon was a little strong. And we made it's bourbon with honey and sweetener and flavors added to it. And it's huge market for us now. And same thing, a lot of other things that we've done. They talk about that. I've done a lot of experimenting over the years, but never did put them out on the market. But we've made the cherry flavored one many years ago. We had one in.
So speaking of the internet, there's one of the social media forums out there that claims that you went to a Louisville Bourbon Society and got up there and said that you wish you never did the honey whiskey back in the 70s because it started flavored whiskey.
No, I've never said that. I know of.
His
That's
memory's short though.
Pioneer.
That's also to say that we can't always trust everything we read on the internet.
Actually, the first one to come out was called Wild Turkey Bourbon Liqueur, and then we changed it from 2006 to American Honey.
Well, it changed a couple times before that. But yeah, 2006 when it came American Honey. But for me, what I stand for is I know what Wild Turkey's about. I know how Jimmy built this business, using the best ingredients, non-GMO corn, being premium, distilling in low proofs, barreling in low proofs. So I would never change that. But I think it's fun to see things that are a little unique. The first Master's Keep was the only whiskey we've ever aged in brick warehouses. Decades was basically what I loved. The Revival was just paying a tribute because he did a Loso sherry cask back in the early 2000s. Back then, it didn't work because your consumer was the guy who just wanted his in a glass or maybe an ice cube. So for me, yes, I'm looking at other things. Not all of them do hit the market. I mean, there's stuff that we tried that we didn't feel like was worthy. So I always keep that in mind. I definitely don't think we're a flavored, we're not going to keep doing apple and cherry and all that stuff. That's not what
It seems to have died
about.
down a lot, too, like industry-wide.
It's one of those things. It's like vodka. When vodka first come out, it was just vodka. Then you had to go to flavors. And then the flavors, you have to change them every 2 or 3 years. You have to have a different flavor.
Yeah.
And I think that'll happen the same thing in our business.
Yeah.
Yeah, I talk to people like the bartenders we have here that behind the barrel, and they camp out here. And they'll not this go around, but back in the spring we brought in about 60. And one group, I would tell them things I was doing. I'd say, "Don't tell Jimmy," because he wasn't there. So several of them got tattoos that said, "Don't tell Jimmy," because he doesn't need to know everything.
Probably I'll get that. Little on your back, just don't tell Jimmy, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Who says I don't already have it?
But as I say, I've done a lot of experimenting. Back in the 50s, Bruce has got the book where you had to handwrite everything back in that day and time. There's a lot of things in there that I was doing back in the 50s and 60s, just now coming up.
Like different grains and stuff?
He was making gin.
Oh, wow.
And we made gin here for a long time.
Yeah.
But we made gin.
Mm-hmm.
What did he tell you if you wanted to make that now? It cost
You
you?
just said it would cost an extreme amount of money compared to what it cost us back then. Something about the botanicals that he was using at that time were much easier to get, I guess, in the 50s.
And that's the thing. It's just such a new consumer.
Yes.
I mean, when I started here, our company had a chemist that he was putting wood staves in barrels to try to make it taste odor, wood chips, things like that's going on now, but your consumer's so different. So they look for those sort of unique and unusual things. For me, it's like the Loso sherry cask. It's been about 9 weeks in the barrel, and people just like, well, that's not long enough. But for us, that's when it tasted the best. So things we'll do, and we'll keep trying things. I'm a little bit fascinated right now with the barrels. The company we buy barrels from, Independent Stave, they're really into how you burn that barrel, which brings out more vanilla or more caramel, more baking spices. So it's things like that. So I'm constantly looking because you've got bourbon and we've only got one recipe. So there's only so many things I can do. I can keep putting out a 14, 15-year-old whiskey, but sooner or later people, well, it's just another 14 or 15-year-old whiskey. So
Yeah, and you kind of, that's one thing that Wild Turkey's really hung their hat up on is having this one mash bill, this one way. Now, you talk about looking at experimentations with different kind of barrels. Like, why not look at experimentations with different kind of mashes? I mean,
well, I'd love to, but Jimmy's still around. My experiments would be pretty big with our distillery. I mean, I'd love to have, and I've pitched that they, put me a little distillery here where I could do 5 or 10 barrel batches. Now I'd have to do 600 barrel batches. Mm-hmm. So if you got 600 barrels and it turns out no good, then what are you going to do? So it's a little tougher.
Just throw a party.
And we said, we sort of hung our hat on what Jimmy's built it on with that one recipe. So we don't want to stretch it away from what Wild Turkey stood for all these years. So there's things we can do and there's things that I won't do, just out of respect to Jimmy.
Now, Kenny, there's one thing that I think Wild Turkey does not get enough credit for, and that's their rye. That Russell's Reserve 6-year-old is easily one of the best ryes year in, year out. And Bruce, I know that's kind of one of your pet projects is the keeping the rye alive.
Absolutely. I got lucky that I really liked rye, and Mimi does not. So it's one of those things that when I came in and showed a real interest in it and kind of a love for the product, especially in comparison to either of these guys at the start, and I've slowly converted Dad now, that they've kind of let me be the rye guy to get in here. And, we've got something coming out in the future. I don't know. Dad can talk about it because I don't know what we're allowed to say.
We all sign NDAs here.
But we've got something coming out in the future with some barrels that me and Dad were tasting when I first started here on rye. And that's really exciting that it's going to be something that I got to taste before it was ever even an idea, and kind of set some barrels aside for something that's going to be really good. I'm going to continue to really push our rye production as much as I can. We've gone from 2 days a year to multiple days a month sometimes now. Mm-hmm. But there's still a demand for our rye. I still hear, we need this or we need that, or, we don't ever get single barrel rye, or we can't get 101 rye. 101 rye is still only in the States or North America, really. Can't get it overseas very much. So there's a whole nother market out there.
Yeah, for me, Jimmy Russell taught me what I know here. He made me learn it on my own, but he did it supervising me. And I felt like I learned from Booker and Elmer and those guys because they were Jimmy's best friends on bourbon. But I've learned a lot from Bruce on the rye. We made rye. I liked rye in a mixed drink, but when Bruce come in and wanted to taste those single barrels, we did the 6.5-year-old rye, which we thought was great, but we didn't drink a lot of it. And then Bruce comes in, he has a passion for the rye, and I'm taking him through tasting barrels, and it taught me a lot. So, 37 years in, I'm learning from the young generation, so it's good to be the middle child, I guess.
My day and time, rye was basically for mixed drinks. In Pennsylvania and Maryland, when I started, it's like bourbon. If it doesn't say Kentucky, people don't think it's bourbon. But you can make bourbon in place in the United States. When I started, if it didn't say Maryland or Pennsylvania rye, it wasn't rye whiskey.
Yeah.
Now, our rye whiskey is the old formula. We put corn in our rye whiskey.
Mm-hmm. Now, Bruce had mentioned that you don't really care for rye. Why is that?
One of the things about rye whiskey, I think, the thing that I've noticed, people, when you do a blind tasting, people that likes rye whiskey for the first time, they're normally Scotch drinkers. There's a correlation between Scotch and rye. Well, you'd be surprised how many people when you do
the older generation, not
so
the younger generation.
Do you like either Scotch or rye whiskey?
Some Scotches is all right.
He's so firm in bourbon he can't like anything else.
I haven't seen him drink any Scotch.
Well, I was an international judge for probably 15 years in London, England. That big judging, and we was judging all Scotches, any. Catch that, Fred.
That's a giant horsefly went up my nose.
But I was a judge, and we judged all kinds of Scotches, Irish whiskeys, Japanese whiskeys, everything. We were judging all those.
So
and bourbon was always better.
Are you a Scotch guy at all, or you stay away? Good. I think you're going to fit in great with this podcast.
He's more of a tequila guy.
Hey, I like that.
What about you, JoAnn? You experiment outside of the family bourbon kind of rye?
Definitely. I think more so in the past year, just kind of indulging myself in this industry. I want to try anything and everything that I can. Just like every time I'm out with Bruce, it's, have you tried this? Have you done this? Have you tasted this? And
That might not be good, though.
Yeah,
I've been out.
it's always good.
I've been out
but
with Bruce too.
not the most trustworthy, right? But it's definitely the best way to learn and compare to things, because a lot of times you get those drinkers that come in and their head set on, I love this product or this brand. And it's one thing I've learned from Bruce and definitely these guys is, oh, you like this? Have you tried maybe this product or this product that could be a little bit similar to that, and maybe convert them to the turkey brand?
So one of the things that we've been talking about is learning a lot from you guys, and Eddie, you've already said that you've started to learn a little bit from Bruce in regards to rye. Jimmy, I want to kind of point this one to you: is what have you learned from younger generations that you're applying today?
Well, this is saying that the younger generation is wanting different types of drinks now than the old timers wanted strictly straight bourbon, and nowadays everybody's experimenting, wanting different things, and going on with them, and continue to do it. I don't know how long it'll last, but it's one of those things. But just like in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, when gin and vodka got strong, we didn't change anything. We kept making Wild Turkey the same way. A lot of them lowered their proof, done different things. Our federal government even passed a law that you could make light whiskey back in that day, competing with the gins and vodkas. It didn't go over.
Oh, it was a horrible decision. But you know what? There were 4 brands when vodka was making its rise in the 1960s and early 1970s. There were 4 brands that stayed true to bourbon: Jim Beam, Wild Turkey, Evan Williams, and Maker's Mark. Mm-hmm. Today, those are the top 4 selling bourbons because you never strayed from being bourbon.
Same with when I started, everything was bottled around 100 proof. Now, it's went down in proof. People wanted lower proofs. But I've seen a huge change in the last several years now. Everybody's going back to higher proofs. They don't want the low proofs anymore. They want their higher proof bourbons. And during that time, when a lot of them was losing out on sales, we never did have any loss of sales. We didn't have much of a gain, but we kept growing a little bit all through that period of time.
Mm-hmm. I think right now you could just sell straws in the visitor center and let them come into the warehouse and drink straight out of the barrels, and you do fine.
They can't be plastic, though.
Yeah, that's right. The trend is
you got to figure something else.
White oak.
Yeah, there you go. White oak straws.
reusable.
So one of the last questions I kind of want to bring up, because this one came from, I don't know, you could call him Wild Turkey superfan, you call him your stalker, Rare Bird
101?
Rare Bird, yes.
Oh, Dave.
Oh, yeah, good guy.
Great guy.
And so he kind of wanted to kind of go around the table real quick and kind of look and figure out, what's your honest opinion on the new design for the bottle of Wild Turkey Kentucky Spirit? Because it was something that, right now it's sort of being rebranded. It's kind of just going into the rare breed barrels, right? And he kind of looked at it as like, it's big, like, oh man, like why would they do that? Like you had some that was like an iconic bottle. So what's your thoughts on that? And be as brutally honest as you want.
Well, to me, new marketing people know that's old fashioned. That's an old fashioned bottle, something new, something different. As long as they don't change the product inside, it's all right. But that's what it is. Everybody's wanting something different now, especially in marketing. Something stands out. But I've always thought that's a beautiful bottle, and they're doing away with it now.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. Definitely, I think is the one bottle that stood out in our portfolio. But I also can see where marketing is going with it, and it's the only bottle that doesn't really fit in with the rest of the portfolio.
It kind of needed to change a little bit. The way the bottle is shaped, I think there's 2 main reasons why Campari wanted to change. One, the bottle is the most expensive piece of glass in our portfolio, year in, year out. It's very expensive to have that kind of turkey tail fanned out. Also, it's almost impossible to have a bottle with the shape of Kentucky Spirit be easily used in a bar setting because the neck is so short and the bottle is fat, kind of squat, that a lot of times when you walk in bars, bottles of that shape are kind of turned sideways. And the Kentucky Spirit bottle is not one that you can really tell what it is when it is turned sideways. So that's hurt us on premise. About the new bottle, no comment.
Don't want to make too many people mad.
Yeah, I mean, because you've personally seen this with Russell's Reserve over the past few years, right? You've had a few different label changes, right?
Yeah, definitely. And even the last one, which I didn't like at first, really grew on me, and I think it looks really good now. I hate to see this change. I think it's going to hurt the sales of Kentucky Spirit because I think that iconic bottle was part of the reason that some people went back to it. You know, it's a great tasting whiskey, but, you know, we do see, you have to think business along with what you do. And in the business setting, that bottle turned sideways and the back bar really is not good for you. You need them to be able to see it. I would have liked to have seen a better design than just basically going to the rare breed bottle, but it makes it easier for bottling. It makes it easier to get it out on the shelf and all that type stuff.
You know, one of my biggest criticisms of Wild Turkey in the past decade has never been really the whiskey. It has been the packaging. There's been like several rebranding of packaging, and I have genuinely felt bad for Wild Turkey because the Wild Turkey 101 bottle changed, I think, 3 times in the last 10 years. Mm-hmm. And that's just too much for such an iconic, you know, everyday bourbon.
That it is bad for business. I don't care like who you are. If you change your product that much, especially a product that is built on consistency. I think if you looked back in him and Booker and Elmer and them's talking points back in the day, consistency was probably used more than any other word.
Yeah.
And when you change something like that on people, your base consumer automatically thinks the product's also changed. And that has hurt us. Every time we change a bottle, what's different? What's the difference in the age or the proof or the taste, or are you buying whiskey now?
And we're like, I swear, it doesn't change.
It's
nothing.
the same, and it's really hard to convince somebody unless you bring them here or they know us. It is the same because as a consumer of goods, I also wouldn't believe the guy. That's
So why aren't the people listening to you?
Uh-oh. Somebody played Stump the Chump over here.
I don't mean that to be maybe, but like as someone who's passionate about bourbon and the brand, I've tweeted about this probably 30 times in 10 years, you know, and like it's like, and Kenny's talked about it, and it's like, you know, we're consumers.
Well, I think that if everybody that works on the supplier side really loved and cared about and enjoyed the product as much as you do, honestly, then, I mean, all things would be a lot different. But not everybody is going to have the same passion for our product that we do. But that's, I think, why Dad and Mimi and people like that are so important.
Well, I'll just say that's a shame. That's a shame. I feel like everyone who touches the product should have that passion there. So
We should leave it on a high note, though. Let's not leave
absolutely.
it on a low note. There you go. So let's leave it on a high note. So to kind of close this out, you know, since this is a very family this is, I think, the first time we've ever done anything like this on the podcast, is have a whole family here together to actually talk about this. So I guess let's just go around and choose one person and kind of like what in one word like embodies them and like how you see it, whether they've taught you something, whether they're teaching you, like whatever it is, right? So I'll hand it over to you, JoAnn, first. I'm going to put you on the spot.
Oh goodness, Jimmy, just passion. I mean, you don't find many people in the industry that have worked for 64 years and still come to work at 80 plus years old, you know, and hanging out in the visitor center. And it really just, when you come to the distillery, you can't help but fall in love with this place. You can't help but fall in love with the tradition, Jimmy and Eddie and what they've done here and just the passion. It makes me want to work harder and make them proud of what I do in the future for the company.
So is your 401k, like you're locked in here forever? Is that what you're thinking?
I hope so. I don't know, though. We'll see. I hope to be around for a very long time, though. When I first started here, I work at a distillery. That's awesome. But then I kind of really got into the passion and seeing what Jimmy and Eddie do on a daily basis. And like I said, you just can't help but fall in love with it and want to be here every single day. I mean, look at the view that I get to look at every single day that I come to work. It's unbelievable.
All right, Eddie, we gotta find a good word in your heart here. How embodies somebody here?
No. You know, for me, I came here as
You seem like a good touchy-feely guy, right?
I came here for a summer job, basically, and within a few weeks, I realized I wanted to stay. And it was more about the people that worked here that I grew up around, and you know, they had a passion for this place, and it was people I'd known my whole life. And then, as you get here, I think you realize not only what Jimmy, but even Booker and Elmer and those guys, they believed in what they did, and they loved what they did. You know, it's amazing to see these guys that's their whole life, you know. So I think that's what sort of give me the passion to instead of fight Jimmy all the time like I did for a long time, was, understand exactly what he was meaning about the different things and staying true to his craft. So, like I said, I'm learning from Bruce. I'm sure JoAnn will teach me a few things down the road, but, I look to learn from whoever I can, and it's pretty neat that you're 37 years in the job and still learning.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Bruce, we're going to go to you next.
Okay. I'll do one for each of them. Since I don't want everybody to be left out.
Thoughtful guy.
Yeah,
right? So
So
thoughtful.
JoAnn's would probably be curiosity right now, because she's in that kind of mode where she's just trying to, what is this? Like, we'll be in bars or at other distilleries or wherever we're at, and she'll see something and immediately, what is that? And it's really cool to see somebody in that part of their career. And I would say she's taught me a lot about people her age, very new consumers, on what they look for. Mimi's, I would say, is obsession. I don't think it's a passion. To be his age and to work in the same job for so long, people that are passionate about something still retire. And it's obsession. This distillery is a part of his life in a way that I've never seen anybody else be connected to just a singular place. And it's not just the whiskey, it's the people, it's just being out here. He has a different demeanor and a happiness about him that you don't see anywhere else. And then Dad's, probably for me, it's a little bit different because I'm a son and we work together, so it's probably patience.
There you go.
Wow.
We have to deal a lot with each other here and then also at home. And he's gone out of his way to be patient with me and kind of let me make mistakes. And then after I make the mistake, then kind of give me advice. He kind of lets me, fall down a couple times and then gives me the Band-Aid. I think that's, it's the best thing he could do.
That was just the opposite way Jimmy treated me.
What, he push you down?
He would push me down and step on me.
Just rub a little dirt in it. You'll be all right.
Yeah, you just learn from your past. So,
Well, I think, the way Eddie was brought up, he was doing everything. If he'd have started up here, a lot of people wouldn't have had any respect for him, especially in a small community he went to school with and all. But he's done everything here. He didn't think it was right at that time, but he's done everything here. And he can't say, hey, well, you never done this. He's done everything they have to do.
Sounds good. Well, I think it's a good kind of way to wrap this up, don't you think, Fred?
Yeah, I gotta say, when I think of the Russell family, to me it just embodies all of Kentucky. It's we did at Bourbon and Beyond, we gave that tribute to him when unfortunate circumstances kept him from coming, and to me, through the heart of not just bourbon but Kentucky, and it's such an honor to spend time with you all every time.
Thank you, Fred.
Absolutely. So with that, we're going to go ahead and we'll wrap it up. For anybody that wants to find these people on Instagram or Twitter, I know you're a big Instagrammer now, aren't you? Eddie's he's really gotten into
post
it.
a little bit.
Yeah. So 34 years master, right?
That's right.
JoAnn, do you have one you want to share?
It's just JoAnn Street.
There you go. Bruce?
Mine's Russell's Raga.
There you go. And just plain old Jimmy. Right?
Plain old Jimmy.
Plain old Jimmy on Instagram.
Do it right or don't do it at all.
So I want to say thank you again for coming on. If you like the show, make sure to support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Bourbon Pursuit. You can also follow us on all those great social media channels, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Bourbon Pursuit. And if you have any more show suggestions, things you'd like to see, new guests, topics, questions, anything, send us an email, team@bourbonpursuit.com. With that, we will see everybody next week. If you love Eagle Rare Bourbon, then go support the causes they stand for at EagleRareLife.com. You can read hundreds of stories, just like the ones you heard today. So go and vote for the 2019 nominees that inspire you the most. Hurry, because voting ends on December 5th.